Here with me to talk about the Los Angeles Rams and their hopes is longtime Rams fan, and he was on last year talking about the Rams as well. And, he's got to be feeling a little bit positive. But Donald Johnson, I'm glad you're here to be able to talk about the Rams here on the podcast.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me again.
Well, Donald, how did you become a fan of the Rams, and what was the attraction to them, and how did you stick with them, especially being on the East Coast?
Well, I'm in my 50s, so I started playing football when I was a little kid, and we used to play at the Salvation Army, and I played on a team that had a horn on the helmet like the Rams did. So when I saw a Rams helmet on TV, I started liking that team from probably 8 or 9 years old. So that's the reason why I became a Rams fan, because I like the helmet. So
what has been your biggest moment as a Rams fan? Was it the return to LA? Was it the return to the Super Bowl? Is it even the greatest show on turf back in the St. Louis days?
Yeah, I've just been a Rams fan. There's a bunch of memories that I can think of growing up, watching the Rams, in 79, the Steelers, Rams Super Bowl, things like that. So there's been a bunch of good memories. Of course, the Kurt Warner, greatest show on turf, Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt, and them guys. There's been some great stories. And then when I was watching that, the Cincinnati game, they were saying that Joe Burrows possibly could break the Los Angeles Rams' Norm Van Brocklin, most yards in a game, and that was a Rams, but that was a little bit before my time. But it just goes to show you, sometimes they thought those guys didn't throw back then, but 500 and whatever yards in any NFL game is a good game. So, yeah, there's so many great things that I remember growing up, the young bloods, and I've always been a Rams fan, and I just always root for that. And anything, I've tried to find the good, no matter how good or bad they are.
Going into the season, I know the biggest headline was the acquisition of Matt Stafford from Detroit in exchange for Jared Goff. Going into the season, what were your expectations? Were you thinking 12 wins and the division title as well automatically, or was that something that you were a bit cautiously optimistic about?
Well, I thought we gave enough first-round draft picks around to get some of the best players last year. In a couple of years, Jalen Ramsey and all these guys, Matthew Stafford, they did give up quite a bit. He's 32 years old. I was kind of a Jared Goff fan. I mean, I believe any quarterback will be a good quarterback if they got an offensive line to protect him and a running game to set that off. Sometimes, for me, I was seeing Matthew Stafford, but he played on a terrible team, so he put up the yards. But when you think about the yards that he put up, how many of those yards were garbage yards? He playing on teams that were not very good. And then, okay, they're playing from behind all the time. So the quarterback's going to throw 50 times, make 50 attempts every game. So, I mean, you're going to look with those padded numbers if you're playing garbage points all the time. But I was excited about Matthew Stafford. Everybody was saying it was an upgrade from Jared Goff, but I didn't watch Matthew Stafford enough, going up maybe Thanksgiving Day, things like that. But I thought maybe an upgrade, a smarter, intelligent player is what made me more intrigued. That I think he knew how to call a game, and I think he knew how to take control of the situation, where I think Jared Goff was being told what to do. And I think now with Matthew Stafford, he can run an offense. He can check down on plays at the line of scrimmage. And I don't think Goff was that good at doing that.
Definitely. And I think the experience that Stafford had going through the insanity that he had to do with Detroit, learning how to play without a big weapon like he did in Detroit, like Calvin Johnson. Now he's got himself a little bit more acclimated to playing with a variety of weapons now in LA with Odell Beckham Jr. and Cooper Kupp. There's even so many more guys that are too numerous to name. But going into this season, was there a particular moment that made you feel that these Rams are legit and that they can be a threat for not only NFC West, but the Super Bowl as well?
Well, sometimes, before the season starts, you glance at some of those odds that they're taking in Vegas about the chances of getting to the Super Bowl. And there were a lot of people thinking that there's a good chance that they might get there. And I looked at it, but I'm always a pessimist when it comes to stuff like that, man. I never look at, just because we think games aren't won on paper. Just because on paper you look good doesn't necessarily equate to wins on the field. So you have to perform and you have to do what you can do on the field to make you have a winning score, to win the game. So I knew we were playoff contenders, because if we weren't, it was going to be sad. With all the talent we had, there's no way, unless you just did not play up to your capability, that you're going to be. So I'm thinking playoffs. I didn't know. I mean, it's funny how people were picking Seattle to win the West, at the beginning of the season, and the Rams were like picked third. Sometimes what the people were picking on that, but overall, there's things that they were saying, but nothing less than playoffs this year. That's for sure.
Was there a particular game in this season, a loss or a moment that made you sort of question how good the Rams were going to be, where maybe these guys aren't going to live up to all the hype? Was it the loss against Arizona? Was it the loss to the Niners? Was it even the loss against Tennessee or Green Bay?
I thought the Tennessee game, in my mind, I mean, I knew Green Bay is good, and I knew the Cardinals had a but the 49ers and Rams, because they're division foes, both of them could be 1-19 and still play a game out of this world. But I thought the Tennessee just took it to them. They just punched them in the mouth, pushed them all over the field. I was like, oh my gosh, they're getting their behinds whipped. The Cardinals, that first round, they did too. So that game kind of warmed me. The Tennessee game did.
Looking into the bracket of the NFC playoffs, they're pretty much the Rams are a lock. Now, where they're going to be, that's going to be the other question. But who do you think in the NFC playoffs the Rams match up the best with?
I wouldn't mind playing the Cardinals again if that's the way. I mean, it may, if the Rams are the last seed division winners, they would play the Cardinals, but they would be home at that game. I think the Rams match up with them good, and I would probably like to play them. I mean, in any of the wild cards, I'd rather play, but as long as we didn't have to play Green Bay, but I think Cardinals would be all right for me to match up. And it looks like possibly that might happen depending on the next two games.
I know you mentioned Green Bay as one of the teams that you're hoping not to see. Is there anybody else that scares you? Is it Niners? Is it Dallas? Anybody else that scares you in the NFC playoff bracket?
Dallas is definitely a team. And I've got so many friends that like the Cowboys, and they're on that train heavy now. And they're playing some of the best football I've seen. Their defense is stepping up. That's going to be a tough get for anybody that plays against the Cowboys. So Green Bay and Dallas, I'm not feeling either one of them at all. Not first round.
I know last year, everybody was sort of saying that Sean McVay's luster is sort of starting to wear off, especially a couple of years removed from the Super Bowl and then seeing the struggles they had. Even though 10-6 last year was fairly good, now they're 11-4. What is it that you've seen in Sean McVay that made you feel that his career obituary has yet to be written?
I love his energy. I mean, I love how he runs down the sideline, and I think like that. Sometimes I just don't think his clock management is the best. When they get way ahead, then they put this zone. A lot of teams do it, but it seems like the Rams leave the middle wide open all the time. Just like in Minnesota, they were moving down the field like 4 or 5 plays. They were down the end of the field. If you've been winning the game the way you were playing the whole game, I don't understand why you can't just keep playing like you were playing instead of doing this prevent stuff. I just don't like the way he does. And then a lot of times they call timeouts out of the blue, when I know he looks at the defense because he's an intelligent guy, but he looks at the defense and go, we're going to change that. Right. If they can move the offense of that, that fast, he should be being able to save some of them timeouts when they need them. So I think sometimes clock management's not the best.
Yeah, and that's interestingly enough. I know he's very offensive minded. How have you seen him handle a defense, especially as a head coach and offensive minded head coach? And now he's in the first year with a new defensive coordinator after Brandon Staley left to take the job with the Los Angeles Chargers. But how do you think he's been able to handle defense and have Raheem Morris run his defense for him?
I do like the way Raheem Morris does his defense. They're just rushing forward. They don't blitz many times. They blitz once in a while. When you got a corner that can take their team's best receiver out of the game and they can do that press coverage and things like that, The offense is what bothers me. They do enough to stay in the game, and they have that bend, don't break mentality. I mean, teams move up and down the field against the Rams, but when it gets on the 20-yard line in that red zone, they press the defense is closer. They can't play that real out mode. So they seem to do a lot better when the other team's in the red zone. Their offense, as far as the Rams offense, I think they rely a lot on Cooper Kupp. And I think that Matthew Stafford, they moved him up under center after the last 4 weeks, a little bit more than I've seen the whole season. So I get that, but he's not very mobile. I mean, they used to roll Jared Goff out on the side, and they've been doing it a little bit here lately. But if Matthew Stafford can't get rid of the ball in about 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds, standing in that pocket, it's a sack. So he's not very nimble-footed in that pocket the way I would like it to be. And they put him in that position. So they've been changing week to week. They used to do a lot more guys in motion, flipping to motion, doing things. They've been doing a little bit more, but last year they did a lot. That second guess offense made teams think, and you had to play it safe, and you can't always, do that. But when you can sit as a fan and say, you know what they're going to do now, when you become a predictable offense, which the Rams shouldn't be predictable. They got enough weapons that they shouldn't be that predictable on that. When they get ahead, okay, we're going to run the ball. And then we give the other team the ball back with way too much time left, and opportunities to do that. So I just think there's more to what they need to do, on offense. The defense is going to be there. I mean, they've got the weapons to do that. Johnson, the third, they went to Cleveland. I liked him. I wish they hadn't got rid of him. But it seems like they got rookies that are stepping up to the game, and that's a good thing. When you got a third-round draft pick that's starting and making plays, that's what you hope. Good draft.
Going to the prediction for the Super Bowl, who do you have coming out of the NFC? Who do you have coming out of the AFC? Who wins the game, and what's the final score?
Unfortunately, I don't think the Rams are going to be the Super Bowl. I think they maybe make it to the NFC Championship on that, but I think the Green Bay and the Kansas City Chiefs are my teams. The Chiefs are playing good. I just think that's going to be the Super Bowl. And I believe the Chiefs will beat the Packers in the Super Bowl. Probably it's going to be high scoring, like 35-28, something like that. I'll tell you what I would be looking forward to is watching the Cowboys and the Packers play. I'd love to see that game. I wish it was like this weekend. I don't want to wait to the playoffs. I just want to see when guys are clicking on all cylinders. I'd like to see those games play. And then this weekend, Cowboys got the Cardinals. So we'll see what they're made of. Cardinals are a little bit better than what they've been beaten, but the Cardinals haven't played good the last few weeks with COVID stuff, so they're getting to a point where they need this game. And Dallas have already clinched it. So I would like the Cardinals to lose, and then the Rams play the Ravens. The Rams beat the Ravens, Cardinals lose, then the Rams won the West, just like that.
Well, Donald, I do appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to do this. I want to know if you had any shout outs you wanted to give to anybody, anything you wanted to promote as well, and what are ways people can reach out to you to talk Rams football?
Well, they can just look me up on Facebook, and then it goes to my Instagram account. So just look up Donald Johnson, and I got my Rams jersey on there. And just shout out to my boy, Mike Brittingham. I just finished watching his little Ravens deal a little while ago. So shout out to Mike Brittingham. So all I can say is go Rams.